Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brew Brothers Podcast, a Magic the Gathering podcast exploring modern solutions to modern problems. My name is Ben, otherwise known as BDuggs, a 3-mana Rakdos creature with discard a card, show your opponent your deck because it's super cool. And on my left, I think I have TunaChip. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? TunaChip, a 1-mana artifact with tap, sacrifice, crash moto.
Awesome. And then on my right, I have BigBizz, otherwise known as David.
Hey, I'm David, otherwise known as BigBizz. I am a black enchantment creature with Shroud Unblockable, cumulative upkeep, remove a banned card from your deck list. Gotta have those banned cards.
Only banned cards. And today, for our first episode, we're going to talk about how we all got into Modern, how we feel about the Modern meta, and a super sweet tech at the end. But before we get started, I think we have a hero card of the week.
Yeah. Okay. So, listen tight right now. The big bad fucking hero card of the week. It's simple. Lantern of Insight. Don't play Lantern of Insight. I know it got a 5-0. It's fun for you. You're removing. It's fun as a zero-sum game for some of us. Don't play Lantern of Insight. We're gonna get into our personal history with Modern. I love Lantern Control. It's a great deck. Karn the Great Creator is still legal. People are playing fucking Stony Silence in the sideboard of their decks because out of nowhere, Aspiring Spike said it's the new meta for graveyard decks to play it in the sideboard. There's no way you're gonna get away with playing Lantern of Insight as your main win con. I don't care if you got the Sword of the Meek Thopter combo. It's not gonna fucking work. So that's our hero card. Get that shit out of your. Put it back in the binder. You know what? Put it on TCG Player. Sell it. Sell it now. It's never gonna be played again. You're never going to sleeve that thing up ever again. Now, that said, we're going to go ahead and get into our first topic. Our first topic, how we all got into Modern, our personal history with Modern. Modern's been going on for a really long time. I've been playing since about Innistrad, Return to Ravnica. That's when I got in. What about you guys?
I can jump in here. I don't know. I'll go before Ben. Sounds great. So for me, I was a standard player. That's how I started out in Magic. My career started as a standard player. I suppose before that, even as a kitchen table Magic player.
Get out.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out.
So I owned a lot of cards as I realized, like that deck building didn't just have to be searching up every card that could possibly fit, going from casual to standard. Having rate limiters made building decks significantly easier. So having a format that sort of set boundaries helped. Well, then I realized that standard was really expensive. I met a friend in college that was like, hey, standard decks are terrible. And I didn't believe him. I played a standard deck against a modern deck. I realized modern was a significantly more powerful and interesting format. He convinced me to start playing. My first modern deck ever was 8-Rack. I didn't want to play a tuned version of that. And as you can imagine, a tuned version of 8-Rack still isn't very good. Built my own Rakdos 8-Rack deck. Was very cool. Had a lot of fun playing it, developed my own list for that, and then slowly decided to play good decks, and that was when I picked up on Yawgmoth. And ever since then, I've just been an Aspiring Spike stan and played pretty much anything and everything that he's played on stream that looks interesting to me.
What about you, Ben?
I think that's the best description of Mr. David I've ever heard as an Aspiring Spike stan. Myself, I got into Magic itself, also in Standard, and at an unfortunate time in Standard as well, because I started playing during Battle for Zendikar about midway through the set, and guess what Standard that was? Siege Rhino Standard, which sucked for everyone. So I learned really quick how to lose with grace, as I was very new to the game, and my sister actually taught me how to play the game on Legacy. So my first real game of Magic was with Legacy Goblins. That was a fun time. This is back when I played Rashad Important Wasteland. So when I got started, I originally, my first deck I ever made was a red-black deck because I had pulled the Flip Chandra Fire of Kaladesh, I think, and the Flip Liliana Heretic Healer. And those are my two favorite cards because they are mythics that I pulled out of Origins packs. So I built the deck around them. It neither synergized nor was very good, and I got siege right out of the game repeatedly. But I did get to flip Liliana a bunch of times. I rarely got to flip Chandra.
That's pretty sick. I mean, I think that modern is sort of this weird format, right? Where it's like it's casual and it's competitive. There's this like constant presence of both forces. It has just a wide enough card pool that you can be creative and you don't have like so much of a hard time. It's one of these things, like if you're good enough and you're putting in the creative work, you can tune a weird idea that hasn't been done before and make it competitively viable. I mean, that you just mentioned Spike, right? Spike's entire career is based on digging up an idea that somebody like recognized at some point, either in the chat or him himself, and then being like, wait a second, can this actually be competitively viable? So that's how I've always thought about Modern. I guess technically when I first got into Magic, or the first Magic cards I owned, oddly enough, this sounds like a made-up story. I lived in a very small town, and at the end of the block, there was this old grain elevator that was attached to like a building in the back. And kids apparently were hanging out in the back and like kept shit in there. I went in there one day, and there was a box with a binder full of baseball cards, and then in the back of the binder, there were Magic cards. And we were kids. We had no concept of property and theft. We believed that we had stumbled, because the building was just like torn down. I was like, oh my God, these people died in a fire and their Magic cards were left behind. So we took those. I only have one card from that like initial, because it was just like a few binder sheets. It was nothing good. It wasn't like Black Lotuses or Moxen or anything. But I did get a 7th edition Nightmare. As soon as I saw that card, I thought this game rocks. The old border where it's like the drippy, nasty goop, the horse that is like kind of like phantasmal. Super cool. I definitely wanted to try and get into the game. I tried playing the game with just like a few like terrors and random black commons that I was given by a friend. And I never got to cast that Nightmare in any of the games that we played because he just played like a mono red thing. So I learned, even in my very first games of casual Magic, I learned very soon, just because you like a card doesn't mean you get to play it. Just because you think an idea is cool doesn't mean it's actually going to pan out. What was everybody? Okay, Ben, what did you say was your first Modern deck? Because David, you said your first one was, well, I don't know if you even consider this your first competitive Modern deck, but you said that you tried out 8-Rack. You became enamored with 8-Rack. Did anybody else have like a first love in Modern?
I'll claim 8-Rack. I absolutely will be willing to claim 8-Rack as my first competitive deck. The degree of competitiveness, feel free for you listeners out there to debate that in your head. I'm not going to argue that. But it was my first Modern deck, and it was awesome. It's my baby. I still own it.
What was the red for?
I was willing to buy cards.
Lightning.
Croxa, baby, and Lightning.
Oh, wait.
Blightning. Oh, my God. Yes, Blightning also.
Yeah, it was
Lightning
100%
was my pet card. Lightning is my pet card. That card is so cool.
One of the first times I ever met David, he cast Blightning against me, and I was like, okay, we can be friends.
I didn't realize that you entered so late that Croxa was in your first competitive Modern deck.
Okay, so I will say it's not that I entered the Modern format so late. When I actually physically bought the deck, it was late enough that Croxa existed. So when I was theory crafting the deck and when I had it put together, I was a broke college student. I had no money. There was I proxied my deck. Mm-hmm. My college let me print the cards out for free. There you go.
Yeah.
And I wasn't playing it anywhere that I needed to have real cards, so it was great. I played with my buddies, and I didn't have Croxa in there. But by the time I bought the deck, Croxa was released, and released and charging in my deck.
The first modern deck I learned about, I guess the first 3 modern decks I learned about, the first one I learned about, period, was Merfolk. I learned about Merfolk. Someone like played an Aether Vial, and I was like, this card's kind of cool. What are you doing with that? I'm playing at the time a black-white humans deck that was like, I was trying to take the black-white humans token deck that was in standard at the time during around Gatecrash's release and like slowly add other cards. So I was proxying stuff too. I got taught about this card, Dark Confidant, and I was like, yeah, we'll put 4 of that motherfucker in there. I was taught about, oh my God, the one card that I played that was not a human, and I certainly shouldn't have. I still thought Lingering Souls was good enough for modern. It's never been good enough. It'll never be. Oh, I'm willing to say it. Don't even pretend. You can play some of them in your sideboard.
Lingering Souls is a good sideboard card for Murkside.
Oh my God. No. Oh no. Today you're even going after the today angle? I thought you would at least go for the Mardu Pyromancer angle. Come on.
Oh my God.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we can just go there too.
Ryan just completely ignored the fact that Mardu Pyromancer ever existed.
Okay.
I would like to put it on the record that Ryan started evil. We didn't make him this way.
It takes more. It takes more than 3 months of competitive viability before they ban the card that actually makes your deck full of bad cards playable, Faithless Looting, for a card to be considered competitively viable. In my opinion, if you're leaning so heavily on the card Faithless Looting that every other card in your deck gets to be bad and your win percentage is just like still less than Jund in the same format, not a competitively viable card. And don't even come at me with, you could play Lingering Souls back when Jund was out of favor and Abzan was in favor because you could put your equipment onto this. Shut up. It's a waste of time. It's not true. It's always been a card that wasn't good enough, but people played it anyway. That was the hero card of the day. That was the hero card of Yonder. I think so Merfolk. People played Merfolk so I went to college. Speaking of broke college students, I went to college not playing Magic. I went to the cafeteria. There were kids there playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I played Yu-Gi-Oh! For a little bit as a kid, like competitively. And then I was like watching that and I was like, this is stupid. None of these cards are the cool cards. What happened to the clowns? Where are the clowns? I look over, same cafeteria. There's like CRTV with the VCR attachment, like held together by bungee cords, 12 to 20 guys at a time, all circling around playing Smash against each other, Smash Melee with a GameCube instead of doing their homework. And then there was one table where people were playing Magic. And I was like, oh, I see it. They're playing Merfolk, and then people are just playing like whatever random trash they had. So I tried playing that for a little bit. I played against hashtag Sultai guy for the first time. I played against a guy that was playing like Snapcaster, Deathrite Shaman, which was legal at the time. Insane. That's not okay. And just like Dark Confidant, Cryptic Command. And I think he was playing like 4 copies of the 3/2. What's the unblockable blue-black land?
Creeping Tar Pit, baby.
He was tar pitting me.
Can't forget Creeping Tar Pit.
I got killed by Tar Pit every single time. There was no
Tar Pit.
other.
Tar Pit was a modern powerhouse for a long time.
Yeah.
How could you beat an unblockable land creature like that? And it was a duel. Like,
reflect
man,
on that, right? You gotta reflect on that. Where was modern that creeping tar pit was not only playable, which I think we could all easily acknowledge it isn't now.
Yeah.
But was like a format staple.
It used to be pretty good. But then again, so was the blue-white one. So was the 4/4 like
Celestial Colonnade.
Celestial Colonnade. Like manlands for a while.
Your control players are still gonna hear this podcast, and they're gonna tell you that Celestial Colonnade is always still playable.
Oh yeah.
In fact,
one of us to win.
As a spike chatter, how do you win the game without Celestial Colonnade?
Yeah, because we all know that blue-white is the hardest deck to play in the format as well, right?
It is. Yeah,
as a fellow spike chatter. Anyway,
it's
now
only
you get to hear
hard.
the great story of how I got into modern. Are you fucking ready?
Yeah.
So, have you guys ever heard of this guy? He's like pretty well known. I think his name's Saffron Olive.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. So I got introduced to Saffron Olive by my sister. Again, she introduced me to basically all this Magic stuff. She introduced me on a family trip. I basically refused to watch him because I don't know, I thought I was cool, I guess. So I basically refused to watch him until we went on a family trip to Hawaii when I watched him for the first time. And I was freaking hooked. There it counts. I was freaking hooked and I would never put him down. So here we go. Saffron Olive made a deck a while ago that was a land destruction deck, also called Ponza, with Arbor Elf and Utopia Sprawl, that also played Panharmonicon, which is one of Seth's favorite cards. And if you start following the track, my first Modern deck was a budget deck because I didn't have the money to play Modern. It was Ponza and it destroyed lands, and my deck basically had Acidic Slime in it and Stone Rain for turn 2, and I played that deck way longer than I should have.
Avalanche Riders.
Avalanche Riders, baby.
There we go,
Avalanche
buddy.
Riders, baby. I paid for Echo so many times I shouldn't have. That card is a trap.
Even once is too many.
Man. Sometimes you just need a 2/2.
I think it feels a lot better to know that we all started on terrible decks. I feel a little bit better to know that seems to be a general path.
But if you want to talk about my first competitive deck, that is something else entirely, because I started my first competitive deck after, playing Ponza for a long time and, beating a lot of people who were very tilted when they lost. That was the most fun part of it. Is not only was I playing a bad deck,
Ponza.
No, but it was also just a budget Ponza. So I didn't have a single fetch land in my deck. I had the shock lands because they were super cheap at the time, like I had Cinderglade in my deck. I need you to realize that I had Cinderglade in my Modern deck that wasn't playing Valakut. And so then when I moved on from there, my sister was like, hey, there's this cheap deck that you could buy that basically gets you to buy fetches, which is a good investment for Modern. That's also easy to play, and it's not hard to win with. And I'm like, okay, what is it? She goes, Naya Burn. I was like, oh, some people call it Naya Zoo. This was back when Wild McModel was one of the best cards in Modern, apparently. But yeah, I played that for a lot longer than I should have as well. I also, when I started playing it, could not understand how Leyline of Sanctity beats Burn. I could not get it through my little brain why Hexproof would beat my creatures, because I was like, oh, I'll just bolt my own Swift Spear and hit you for 4. What are you talking about? That was a time.
It's been a long while since we all started. So I think even if these decks were competitively viable at the time that they came out, everything in Modern has changed. One, because the format has been eclipsed under at least 2 fresh horizons, but also just the mana curve of decks has gone down so much, especially in the last year. A 3-drop is like a 5-drop from when we started. There was a period of time where people were registering Keranos in the sideboard of twin decks. It's just the curve for a Mirror Breaker. Kiki Jiki costs 5 mana, but a real Mirror Breaker costs 3 mana tops in Modern right now. It's the only way you're actually going to be able to cast it before you die. I think... So this was a thought. Before we close this up, what was everybody's first breakthrough brew? The first time that you tuned a deck or you made a certain change to a deck where you were like, wait a second, this is actually good. This is actually working out. Any first things come to mind, guys?
Well, I guess if we're gonna not acknowledge that Rakdos 8-Rack is just clearly the truth, it would probably have to be this Rakdos scam deck in Pioneer that I was working on with my other co-host here, Ben. So obviously everybody is going to be aware that here's this of Rakdos scam in Modern.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of hard to say Modern meta currently and just say that you're unfamiliar with Rakdos scam. But sure, here we were with Brothers War coming out, and I was like, hey, everybody's really hyped about Phyrexian Flesh Gorger, right? And I mean, that card was a splash in the pan in terms of Modern playability. But for Pioneer, I mean, that's where I was actually interested in the card. I thought, hey, a 7/6 lifelink menace, like that actually has some playability in Pioneer. And so I'm sitting here and I go, there's got to be a way that we can play the scam cards in Pioneer. We bring this thing back. We'll get to play it for 3 mana and have a 7/6 menace lifelink with Ward. That's pretty good. Threw some other cards together. We were looking through, and I was like, oh, I also really love this. Oh God, what is the name of the Phyrexian Dragon Engine? Love that card. Was a big proponent of it. I was like, like bringing it back to be able to reload your hand seems pretty good. And at first, I will say, Ben was like, this card doesn't seem very good, and then he played with it, and I think I might have changed Ben's mind just a little bit on that card. I'll let him speak to that. And then I was like, how cool would it be if we also just had a sub theme in this deck of melding Mishra? And I won't take all the credit for it, because about there is where my idea stopped, and I let Ben start to grab the wheel a little bit and turn us in the direction of, instead of just having a bunch of nonsense, having a little bit of direction, and then we both tuned the list together from there, and I think it turned into something pretty solid.
Notably, I would like to excuse this deck with the fact that I was sick the day that we made this deck, so I was basically agreeing to anything David said. So the things that were in the beginning drafts of the deck were not my fault. But yeah, that was a pretty fun time. I would just like to note before we move on that Phyrexian Dragon Engine is a great card, and I'm a little worried now that it's a Phyrexian. I'm pretty sure David is a sleeper agent now, because he was trying to get me to like a Phyrexian all this time. Where's the oil, David? Where's the oil? But I would also like to note that Phyrexian Flesh Gorger is a 7/5, not a 7/6, you fool. How dare you add a point of toughness to it like we're going to get it back every time because
I'm used to being an 8/6, excuse me. The Undying Malice and crap, what's the other one that adds the counter? Feign Death. They're just like so ubiquitous with the Phyrexian Flesh Gorger that I just have trouble disassociating them.
Sure. I mostly think whenever I hear what is flesh, I think flesh render. I come from such a different era of like Phyrexian cards. I was out of standard stuff. I looked it up though. It's pretty cool. Like this undying creature that has the double strike ability with like a smaller stat, or the double strike unlocks at some point. I'll be pulling it up on screen. Ben, do you have anything that sticks out in particular?
So if we're not focusing on modern, if we're gonna focus on modern, it would be Breach for me, because I've been working on Breach for a lot longer than the general community has. When I saw Jesse winning with Breach, went early in the NRG series, I was like, hey, cool, that's one of the decks that I worked on, because I used to listen to a podcast that I really should continue listening to, but I just kind of forgot because it didn't download it my phone anymore, called MTG Grindcast. And one of the guys on there went to a tournament one time and talked about this super sweet Breach deck that he played that was basically an alteration to the old Grinding Station decks, where it was using Ragavan instead of being a pure combo deck. Yeah. And Ragavan also being a legend for Mox Amber is relevant. And so it was basically... It was the early drafts of Breach when they weren't very good, but I remember going 4-2 at a 1K one time because I drew 17 of my lands in the top 27 of my deck, and I was very tilted because I had like 33 cards left in deck, and they were all non-lands, and I needed to hit a single non-land to win that game against Murktide, and it lost me the entire tournament. And so there were times, for instance, when I was playing it, I was not a believer in Urza Saga at the time, so I would have Urza Sagas in my main deck and Blood Moons in my sideboard because there was so much Tron, and you could not beat Tron with Breach at the time. So I would side out my Urza Sagas into Blood Moons, just a full force swap. And it actually worked out perfectly because if you've ever hit Tron with a Ragavan on one, that lets you cast
Alpine Moon. You could have just played Alpine Moon. I don't know why.
Why would I play Alpine Moon when I could play Blood Moon? Blood Moon affects Titan. It affects so many more things. Anyway,
I think the important thing to note is that this guy across the screen from us is saying, I thought Urza Saga was not a playable Magic card.
I didn't say Urza Saga wasn't a playable.
He wasn't a believer.
I
He wasn't a believer.
Okay, well, I still think that's got to be wrong, right? Like,
It's-
I think from
it's
day
a-
one,
it's a
people were like,
sin.
this card is going to be the most busted card in Modern Horizons 2, brother.
But there was also a time when they were like, maybe Urza Saga wasn't all it's cracked out to be because people hadn't really discovered the best ways to use it yet.
I don't
Admittedly,
remember that time.
admittedly, time has shown, in my opinion, that Urza Saga is like as good as it could possibly be without being so absurdly too good that it just needs to immediately be banned. It's like the perfect kind of card that you can. So it's not like he's. I know a lot of people are ban chasers, and I was for a long time. Whatever your deck is, you're saying to yourself, what cards in Modern probably should be banned? Can I play them in the same deck list? Oko, Mox Opal, even Underworld Breach. Arguably, that's what's currently happening right now. The main incentive is just to say, you know what? Let's accelerate the inevitable change and pick up a couple of dubs on the way there. There's no reason to not be playing the banned cards, especially if they're like in a position where they haven't been pushed yet. I was gonna say, Ben, you're talking like you're this OG grinding station breach guy, but of all people here, you know, I've taken the hiatus. If all people here, I'm probably, from my understanding, although I'll say it's a different variation on breach. My breach was a completely different beast than this. I think I might have the first published paper breach grinding station deck, grinding station breach deck. My earliest like really successful brew, if you even want to call it a brew, because it's like it was just so obvious. It was all about who's going to be the first person to get a 4 grinding station, 4 breach deck to, you know, score well in a tournament. I did, what is it? Third at a classic, SEG classic, doing this list where we're playing. Now this is going to be exhausting because eventually the list became too aggressive to play these like this. But I was playing 4 Emery, 1 Oracle. That's all normal. 4 breach. That's a little bit more than most people. 4 breach, 4 station. It's more than people do nowadays. Baubles, Amber. I had 2 Amber. A lot of standard stuff, and then I had a couple of things in here that are non-standard to this day. 4 Urzas in the main. The card was just incredibly good at the time, and with having 4 Urzas in the main, I also had 2 Sword of the Meek and 1 Thopter Foundry. No Whirs. Instead of Whirs, I have 4 copies of Sly Requisitioner. This I can't take full credit for. So if you aren't already familiar with Sly Requisitioner is a very strange card. It is a 2/2 for 5 mana, 4 and a black, that is improvise. You can tap artifacts. It's like Convoke. Whenever a non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you make a 1/1 colorless servo token. So if you had a grinding station and a Sword of the Meek in your graveyard or otherwise, you could mill your opponent's entire library. You can mill your own library if you wanted, but more importantly, you would mill your opponent's library. This deck, this is the thing that I think is the most embarrassing about this period of time in Modern. We had Mystic Sanctuary, we had Grinding Station, we had Arkham's Astrolabe still legal. There were so many busted artifacts, and I'm still just like playing like 4 Urza in the main. I'm playing this incredibly fair card just because it wins games on its own.
It's not like the rest of the format wasn't like in the same place as you. You didn't lose to a Mystic Sanctuary deck. You didn't lose to an Arkham's Astrolabe. I'm pretty sure you lost to Green-White Titan in that one.
I beat Titan. Do you know what I lost to? Okay. You're going to love this. This is going to come full circle for you, David. You're going to fucking cum your pants when you hear what I lost to.
Let's go. 8-rack.
I lost my last game of that tournament, not going to the finals because I played against a deck that in one game, Lightning Skelementaled me 5 times in the first 4 turns. They were able to like
Lightning Skelemental last week.
That's probably gluing your jeans together like a couple of fucking high school pages. It is not.
It's a one of.
There's no way to get out of it. So they were playing the red black elementals list, not the 5 color. So they had 4 copies of that, 4 copies of the 2-drop that's bringing it back. They're going super hardcore on it. And I think they might have won. I think that list actually won that tournament. But that was probably my first main successful list. Oh, no, sorry. Actually, for Lightning Skelemental, not in fact in an Elementals deck, but in a Jund Death Shadow deck. This had 4 Tarmogoyf, 4 Street Wraith, 4 Death Shadow.
Hot.
Playing 61 cards in the main deck also. Oh my god.
Ooh.
Fucking shout out.
61 card special?
Yeah.
61 card special.
Shout out to Michael Bischoff who fucking slammed it out with the 1 copy of Rena 6 in the main.
I've definitely heard that name before.
Yeah.
In your opponent's defense, Ryan, you were tapping Grinding Station for blue mana with Ursa, so
That's why. Okay, so if I didn't already make this clear, so the weekend before that tournament, I texted the group chat that Ben was in, and I said, "This deck's pretty special. You guys should check this shit out." After the tournament, like the same day, because we're both at the tournament, me and Ben, he like I think in the next week tells me, "You should have told me to buy Grinding Stations. They're at like $25 right now." And I'm like, I told you in the group chat to buy these cards. Now,
Watsy,
admittedly,
please reprint Grinding Station.
don't do it.
God,
Don't do it.
It's an expensive ass card now too. Like,
Yeah, it's terrible.
It went back
Look,
down for a
I'm
while.
saying it as somebody that owns 4 Grinding Stations also, but like, please reprint Grinding Station. It's just such a cool card, and more people should have access to it.
I agree with that. I mean, what, they're $35 a piece right now, I think? Kind of an absurd thing to realize, but maybe they're less.
Before we move on to the next topic, I do have to go grab my child.
Oh, hey,
'Cause she's
snatch
awake.
that shit up.
So I'm gonna need to take a break at least.
If we want to talk
but I
about a
would like-
sly requisitioner right now.
Before I leave, I need to
Grinding
insert
Station
one
is
more thing in
currently
there.
market price $35.
Yep.
In that Brendan, our friend, still holds that tournament against you because you made him miss his Outback. So I believe that was the Indianapolis tournament where I day 2'd with Demir Inverter in Pioneer.
Yeah. You did.
And Brendan I had finished my day 2. I moneyed, and we just went and sat down with my parents, and we just ordered our food. Food was just about to get there, and then we get a text from you that you're done.
Brendan, I know that you're listening. There were at least like 3 to 4 podcasts that end up covering my deck list. That matters more than your Outback. I defend that to the grave.
Brendan still holds the Outback against you. He'll never give it up either, because he's still. I mentioned it to him like last time I saw him. He was like, "Yep." You know the way Brendan gets, David, where he just like really loud all of a sudden with his hand up in the air. Yeah, that's Brendan. I love him.
I am now going to ask him about this later when we test.
Yeah,
That sounds
we're
great.
testing later today, so we'll ask him about it.
Hey, do you want to put stakes on this game? You just start like sneaking little things in there. Okay. While he gets his kid, David,
Sure.
I was actually going to toss out one list that I didn't put up. My earliest published deck list is in 2015. So this is not too early for you. This is like when you're actively paying attention. It is horribly built, but it didn't have to win a tournament because that's not how I got it published. I got it published because Craig Wesco ran a deck building competition for an article that he did right when I think it was right when Collected Company came out. And the idea with it was, how can we make it so that when Collected Company gets cast from an empty board, you can win the next turn, but end of turn Collected Company. And if you're not familiar with it, so this is what I did. I made a Naya collected company. Is it collected or collective? Collected company.
Collected. Yep.
I made a Naya collected company deck that played 4 copies of Village Bellringer and 3 copies of Heliod's Pilgrim. Do you know what Heliod's Pilgrim does, my friend?
I don't know
Did I
either
walk
of those
back
2
into?
cards,
Is that-
actually.
Is that the aura searching card?
Yeah. So
It's a 3-mana 1/2 that searches for an aura from your deck and puts it into your hand.
So what you would do is you would end of turn Collected Company. You would hope to hit a Village Bellringer and a Heliod's Pilgrim. Village Bellringer is a 1/4 that when it enters the battlefield, untap all creatures you control. You would then tutor up a Splinter Twin, which was legal at the time, put it in your hand. You would untap, and you would have the 4 mana, hopefully have the double red, to then put that onto your, to put the Splinter Twin onto your Village Bellringer, and then you would make infinite tokens there. And then you Splinter Twin comboed off of a Collective Company. When Splinter Twin got banned, I have rebuilt this deck a million times over. And one of the funnest ones that I did is Goblin Matron got printed, and Kiki Jiki is legal. So instead of playing Heliod's Pilgrim, we played Goblin Matron. We had a couple of other goblins. But then the idea was that you would tutor up a Kiki Jiki using it, and then the next turn you would go land drop Kiki Jiki, do the same thing with Village Bellringer. I love doing like Twin Company so much. It's the stupidest thing you can do with the card Collected Company, because it's just like history has proven bit by bit that those decks are best when they are mainly focusing on getting the card advantage and then maybe have a combo, but it's not the sole focus of the deck. This deck was, one, sloppily built. It has Tarmogoyf, Voice of Resurgence, and Splinter Twin in the same deck. That's just like, what's going on? Take a break, Chief. You've don't let him cook. Stop. He's been cooking too long. It also had 2 Lightning Bolt, 2 Lightning Helix. This is the most embarrassing deck that haunts me to this day. It is 2015. I knew nothing about deck building. But it will be forever on my permanent record. Anytime that you look up my legal name on TCG Player Infinite or whatever, you are going to find this deck list, and it is going to be like it's like cinder block sandals weighing me down into the depths of depression. There will never be something that cleans my record from this deck list, but
I gotta start somewhere, right?
Hey, that's also this card also haunts my dreams. So those are my two biggest chains.
That's my good dreams. That's my good dreams. Lightning Skelemental's there. He's just chilling.
I will say putting a Splinter Twin on a Voice of Resurgence fucking slaps. Getting one of those tokens every turn.
Voice of Resurgence is awesome. I love that.
You just gave me some ideas, because you just said Collected Company in a Goblins deck that also has a combo with Village Bellringer, and now I'm trying to brew a freaking Mardu Goblins combo deck in my head.
Well,
somebody please stop me.
You don't. Well, you can think of. Yeah, I mean, just if you're playing green,
doing it.
You'd already be. It wouldn't be Mardu. It would be like Mossy Mardu, and you'd be playing green. And at that point, why don't you just play the one that every time that a non-human creature enters, it gets a +1 counter? Because then you just do the sack combo with the 2-drop that has persist. Bada boom,
I'm
bada
saying
bing.
it's fine. 4-color combo. That's all we need to call it.
Why do we
just
need
4-color,
the white?
all the combos. You need white for isn't Village Bellringer a white card?
It is, but we don't need to play Village Bellringer if we. Oh my God. Okay, just play normal Jund Goblins. It's way better.
But then
I mean, at this point, you should just be playing Rakdos Goblins.
Oh, you know what? Actually, okay. So we'll talk about this in the next episode.
Rakdos Scam, right, David?
We can talk about this in the next.
Everybody should just be playing Scam for sure. Yeah.
The next episode, we might have it in time. What could be cool with that is the fecundity. If you use fecundity Scam, that could be kind of fun.
Get me started. Oh, you are stop bringing up saffron olive brews. Stop bringing up. Did I not just tell you I was a saffron olive nutcase?
Yeah, I know. Hey, you know what? You know next week's hero card of the week is going to be? It's going to be fecundity.
Is it not going to be Grumgully the Generous?
It might be Grumgully. It might be Grumgully because you're going to shove it into way too many deck lists. Okay, we got another topic. But before we do another topic, David, do you want to go ahead and introduce everybody to the busted card of the week?
All right, take it as a hot take or not, but the busted card of the week this week is definitely Dragon Rage's Channeler, sometimes better known as Darcy. Don't ask me why. I didn't come up with the nickname, but it's certainly stuck. I would argue Darcy is the glue that holds together a lot of the Breach decks currently. The Murktide deck, I think Darcy personally is the strongest card in the Murktide deck. Yeah, I know it's called is it Murktide? But I think that's a question, and the answer is no. It's a Darcy deck. It's a 3/3. It flies, it filters, and makes sure that you never draw bad cards. I swear, I play against Murktide. This card makes sure that my Murktide opponent always has the answer. So whether you're playing it in your Murktide deck or your Breach deck, or back in the day when Lurrus wasn't banned and you were playing it in the best deck of all time, Grixis Shadow. It has always been busted, I think, for the end of time until it is not banned from Modern. It'll just be consistently in the top of playable cards that are underplayed, even if with as much as it's played. I would argue. Yeah.
The fact that every time you cast a spell in any of these Underworld Breach decks, that it puts another card into the graveyard, which basically is like generating mana. It's like a Goblin Electromancer. It's a Delver of Secrets. It's a Lightning Rod for any form of removal in a deck that then has like some kind of if you're facing down the Dragon's Rage Channeler and the only removal spell in your hand is the one that you want to save for the Murktide, but you know that this snowball effect is coming from the Darcy, you kind of have to kill it. There's no real option because it's just gonna get out of control. And then, bam, they slam the Murktide and you're fucked in the ass. It's over.
Beautiful thing about Darcy that nobody realizes is it's so goddamn innocent. You're sitting there, you're like I was playing Jund Creativity recently. So you're sitting there, you got like your one removal spell maybe in your hand, maybe you got a Ren N6. Your opponent just leads off on Dragon Rage Channel, or you're like, it's not Ragavan, I'm fine. And then 3 turns later, they're like playing a Murktide that's an 8/8, and you're like, wait, how did we get here? How did they get so many cards in your graveyard? Then you look at that stupid fucking 1-drop who's just grinning at you on that little card right there, and it's like,
I'll be honest, I think I almost have the inverse problem, and I suppose that's why this is my pick for Busted Card of the Week. I see Dragon Rage's Channeler hit the battlefield, and I'm like, do I have a removal spell in this hand? If so, that card is gone.
Ragavan, you put a Ragavan on the battlefield, you can stop a Ragavan with just a good blocker. You can put a Tarmogoyf on the battlefield. There's no way to like stop a Dragon's Rage Channeler because they don't need to have a removal spell to get over your blocker. They just need to play their game the way that they were going to anyway, and it's going to get flying. The decks are all built to just, hey, guess what? This is unblockable. There was a period of time in Modern where Wild Nacatl was banned. This is just a flying, like 7 different fucking secret little abilities hidden inside of it version of Wild Nacatl. It's the most flexible Swiss Army Wild Nacatl you could possibly want. And for some reason, it's not the card on people's chopping block. Everybody's going for the Breach. They're going for the Station. They're going for, God forbid, they're going for random pitch elementals. This is the card out of MH2 that's creating more problems, in my opinion. If we were even going to claim that there are problems in Modern, this would be the card doing it.
Oh man, I would love to just say how much I agree with that statement. It is an underrated take, maybe a hot take for other people, but boy, do I agree that Darcy is just this thing that fuels what people are complaining about, and they just don't even realize it. They're like, oh, but it's just a fair card. Is it a fair card? I don't know, man. You get mad about these pitch elementals. What's finding them? What's finding them so consistently? Why are they in every deck? Huh? Why are they in every deck? To answer, these dang Darcys running rampant in this format. That being said, to touch on the other thing you just said, too. I think Modern is in a great place. All right, yeah. Modern Horizons 2 and Modern Horizons 1, they were great for the format. Are there a couple cards that are potentially maybe not perfectly balanced? Sure. But after all, I think we've also touched on that in already our first podcast here. Modern is literally just based around cards being broken, right? Like format design in any game, not even just a card game, in any game is going to be based around finding ways to break mechanics. After all, I won't speak for all of you. Feel free to chime in if I'm wrong, but that's what we're here to do, right? We're gonna try to bust some mechanics wide open.
Absolutely. And there was a period of time where it used to be that if something restricted building space or something pushed other cards that were format identity cards out of the format, that Wizards would like reference those as being the reasons that they banned a card. They've loosened up on that, and their ban philosophy has changed. That's something that was a little hard for me to realize when MH2 came out. I'll be honest, MH2, the main reason that I haven't played Paper Modern in a long while is because, yeah, MH2 introduced enough cards that took cards that I'm familiar with out of the format. But is it made the game funner to play? Yes. Has it made the game like more consistently fun? Absolutely. The pitch elementals are a classic example of like there are more games of Magic played in the format of Modern than ever before. There used to be so many non-games played, and I feel like even though there are occasionally these games where it's just like, okay, you landed your thing, I didn't have the answer, and I immediately lost. Cards like this, cards like the pitch elementals, they've really reduced those games to the smallest percentage I've ever seen since I started playing, and I've been in Modern for a little while now.
I saw somebody the other day say that MH2 reduced the play draw difference in Modern.
Yes.
And with the pitch elementals. And I was like, that might be like, one of the best takes I've ever seen about.
Agreed.
And I think this came from Doomwake, a classic hater of Modern and MH2.
It was on Twitter from Doomwake. He was saying, how can we fix Pioneer, as he's the Pioneer guy now, because the play draw disparity in Pioneer is huge. And he had just described that the way that they had done it in Modern, and probably maybe the only way that they can do something in Pioneer that would be like it, would be to have things like the pitch elementals so that you have free interaction that's not based on being the person that has the mana advantage because you started. And so, yeah, that was definitely Doomwake, Ben. I saw the same take. 100% agree.
That's a cool one.
It was a very surprising source for it to have come from as a person who hates MH2. His whole thing is like, I hate MH2 and don't want to see MH2 in Modern. And then it's like, oh, but MH2 fixed the play draw difference, which is what players have been asking for.
Well, as the Spike chatter that just has to represent the takes, maybe playing thousands of hours of the game is just not good for your take on it, right?
Yeah. There's the type of bias that comes from not knowing enough, and then there's the type of bias that comes from having too many negative experiences. And I think that's, of all things that Magic players have, it's too many negative experiences with something to actually be a credible authority every once in a while. What I'm liking about the Modern meta more than anything, because we'll talk about, we're reducing the play draw difference, and I think that's one of the best ways to realize that is if you look at the way that people are building these zoo decks where they're basically playing no one drops half of the time. Some of them will play like bolts, but a lot of people, they're what is it called? Like the 5-color zoo where they're playing with the
domain zoo.
The Boros guy that makes golems. The
General Ferris Rockerick.
Yeah, the Rockerick Zoo deck is a great example. I sent you a list a long time ago, Ben, but right when MH2 came out, because I was really interested in using the Cascade spells for that guy, where it was the only non-multicolored spell in the entire deck was 4 copies of deal damage equal to how many different basic land types you have. The 2-mana spell. What do they call this?
Oh, yeah, Tribal Flames.
Tribal Flames?
Yeah, 4 Tribal Flames and 4 main deck Chalice of the Void. And I was like, if you just get a tri-land on turn 1 every time, and then just get the complementary shock, you can play a Chalice of the Void, mid-range disruptive zoo deck, and then just turn 3, play a Cascade spell, and catch back up. That's one of the things that's been aided by the pitch elementals, is that some of these like zoo decks, the format has actually allowed for decks that don't want to play 1-drops. They don't want to do it. They're what is it that the prismatic enchantment removal?
Ending.
Well, there's prismatic ending, but then there's the enchantment.
He's talking about Leyline Binding.
Leyline Binding and prismatic. So Leyline Binding is another one of those cards that's it wasn't in MH2, but it could have been. That's how powerful of a removal spell it is. It very easily could have been in there. They just decided, hey, let's stand it, have a little bit of play too. Those two cards alone have made it so that cards like Path to Exile and cards like, oh god, there was a period of time where we were playing the you gain 3 and it goes to the bottom. Like blue-white control decks don't have to play bad removal anymore. Like any deck that is playing a white splash can just play 8 copies of some of the best removal spells of all time. These are other things I think that have helped the format too, is that good answers that are universal. It's not always, oh, I have a Fatal Push, but I don't have this. I have this, but I don't have that. The removal has gotten a lot broader in its scope of what it can hit, and most of the threats that exist right now, they're very reasonable in comparison to their answers. So that's why I'm liking it. What's everybody's favorite deck to play as in Modern right now?
So I'm currently going through a New Year's resolution type thing where I force myself to try and play a different deck each month. And my first month was Indomitable Creativity. So the point of this is I own a lot of Magic cards that I never play. And I wanted to try and force myself to play said Magic cards, so, I had a reason to keep them around instead of just staring at them in my binder all the time. Like, oh, I'm going to go look at this $30 creativity I never use. And so this started as that. And I realized as I did this, the reason I don't play these decks is because they're not my play style. And so in the first month when I was playing creativity, I tried playing, like the different 5-color creativities, and I just... every single time I look at Prismari Command, I'm like, I cannot understand how the deck that gets to play the best spells in Modern, gets to play all five colors, that just can't play creatures, plays Prismari Command. And I just could not get it through my head. So I ended up on Jund Titan, which was actually this dual threat kind of deck, because the other thing that has happened to the Modern meta recently is they have gotten very into Orvar. And Orvar really, really hurts Archon of Cruelty. Now, creativity decks have countered this by playing different non-Archon threats in their sideboard, like Sarah's Emissary sometimes they play Sundering Titan. There's the occasional Emrakul as well. So it diversifies. So my thought was, instead of doing that, let's just play Primeval Titan in the main deck, and then we can play 4 persists. We have a bunch of creatures to reanimate for those persists. And hear me out. You ready? Are you ready for the best part? Titan's only 6 mana. You can cast Titan like a normal fucking person instead of having to wait until 8 lands.
Archon's 7 mana, but I understand what you mean.
Archon's 8 mana.
It's 8 mana?
8 mana.
Oh,
yeah, it's an 8 mana.
Why not just Gristlebrand at that point? I've got my biases.
Because you can't I don't know.
Well, you can't do the reanimation plan, but you can whip it off the top.
Yeah, persist.
Oh,
persist
everybody's on this persist thing. Well,
hey, I'm also a Grizzlebrand stan, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you you're wrong. I'm just telling you that's the logic.
That's the logic. I guess it's also when you do it for X = 2, you would like to get 2 Archons.
2 Archons.
I think you could always play 1 copy of Gristlebrand, but that's its own thing.
There's no reason. Like
if you're playing the Cabal Coffers deck, that's how I run it. So you have both.
When you play Gristlebrand, you either need to have the way to make a bunch of mana, like David said, or you need to have a bunch of spells in your deck that are free, that you can turn those cards into resources. So like one of the ways that the Neobrand deck worked is because of Nourishing Shoal. If Nourishing Shoal wasn't a thing, Neobrand would never work.
Yeah, and back when the monkeys were legal.
Elementals.
I mean, pitch elementals are great.
Interaction.
Pitch elementals are great, but guess what? You're playing creativity. So that's not the answer in the end.
Yeah.
What about you, David? What's your favorite deck to play as in Modern right now? Because I know that you're more of a Pioneer guy, but you still play Modern.
Oh, no. Oh, let me walk that back. I am not more of a Pioneer guy. I have more brews in Pioneer, and that is specifically actually because I don't enjoy the Pioneer format nearly as much as Modern. I want to find something that resonates with me in that format, and the decks that exist just really don't. Let's see, in Modern. So, like one of the first decks that I started vibing with in Modern was Yawgmoth. So that's probably one of the ones I think right now that resonates really well. But the other one that I've really enjoyed playing a lot recently is the Risen Reef Elemental deck that Spike had put together. Boy, is it a lot of fun to just accrue card advantage with Risen Reef. With that deck, I mean, I had so much fun. I played it last Wednesday to just go, like trigger Risen Reef, trigger Risen Reef, trigger Risen Reef. Just announcing my triggers, drawing 1 million cards.
I have a question for you.
Lands.
I have a question for you. Have you put Recommission in there yet?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Good.
I was gonna say it's episode 1. We have to introduce them to David's pet card.
Yeah, I was gonna say let me just let everybody in the audience know. Right now, me and David are currently in a bit of a brew battle over a Project X deck right now. I've been making one that's more focused on black mana. He's been making one more focused on white mana, and I don't believe it's for any other reason than the 4 copies of Recommission he put into the deck. For what I can tell is no reason at all.
The reason is Recommission is an awesome card, and I have way too much fun playing with it.
I would like playing Recommission if you had more sack outlets. It's its own question. Are you playing the Altar of Dementia in that list?
My sack outlets in that list are the Carrion Feeders and Viscera Seer.
I make my point, sir. I make my point, sir.
Well,
5 copies.
But that's 5 copies, but also the tutors to get them. So you have like 9 copies.
I have 12 copies if you count my tutors. And I was just about to. Okay, I'll just say it. I can edit this out. I was gonna say I have 12 copies, and my penis is big. That's what I was about to say. That's where my brain went first. It's just a pissing contest. We don't have to worry about it.
I don't think we're gonna finish this now.
No, we can. That's what I'm asking. I can do 15 minutes over. That's what I'm trying to say. So we can keep churning it. I'm gonna say my favorite deck. Did you already get your favorite deck in there, David? I got confused from the fight just now. Oh yeah, you did. The Elementals deck.
Yeah, Yawgmoth and the Elementals deck. Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. I'm always just playing some kind of either food or grinding station based deck. Right now, the thing that if I had to just go into a tournament, I'm probably going to be playing that Tron Semblance Anvil Spike deck. I own all the cards for it. I've played every card in that deck to death. KCI was one of my favorite decks to play. So any opportunity I have to put a scrap trawler, let alone 4 in my deck, you know I'm taking that opportunity. Beyond that, it's just like whatever can get Metalcraft fastest, you're gonna get me fucking renting it from your website instantly. There's card hoarder. You're getting my money the second that I can figure out how to get 3 artifacts in play turn 1 without a Fury clearing my board, because that's the bane of my existence right now. I know that it's probably healthy for the format, but god damn do I miss playing Elves, Affinity, just like puking out Mem Knights without being punished. God, the good old days. The good old days when a Frogmite was worth submitting. But whatever. We'll get over it.
Don't worry about his ranting and raving. Good old Magic Boomer.
We've got a deck tech. We got a deck tech to do.
Yeah.
But before we do that deck tech,
But first, I want to get to the best card that you're not playing this week. And I don't know if either of you guys watch the NRG Championships, but the person who won the NRG Championships, Raja Suleiman, I believe. Suleiman? I don't know how to say his last name. I apologize, Raja, in advance. But Raja was playing this super sweet card that he played against me, actually, when we played in NRG a while ago, called Broker's Charm. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever read this card, but for most of the time, you're just going to pretend that first ability doesn't exist, as this is a control deck, and we're playing, Subtlety and Solitude. A lot of the times they don't stick around. Anyway, this card says destroy target enchantment or draw 2 cards. So, I'm not sure if you've ever met this card, Urza's Saga, but it's a pretty good card.
I'm pretty sure in watching that coverage that I saw this card be used, that first mode for remove target Ragavan.
That's pretty good.
Like I said, it does exist when you need it to, but it's not designed with that ability in mind, to be perfectly honest. It isn't. I don't think it's put in this deck with that ability in mind. It's definitely an add-on, but there's no way that you're like, oh, number one thing I'm gonna do is target my Solitude and deal 4 to their creature and gain 4 life.
Hey, real quick.
Boom. Boom.
Do you have the deck list for the NRG series, or do you know the fastest way to find it?
I can pop it to you later.
I got the NRG Championship here.
The deck lists are all pictures. There's no like actual.
Yeah, no, I just wanna look at it while we're talking. You're good. You're good. Keep going.
So Raja playing a couple of these cards in his deck. It has always been the most dangerous card whenever I look at it in his hand. I'll tell you that. And so he's made me a believer. I will now be thinking about Broker's Charm every time I play a Bant deck to see if I can squeeze it in there somewhere because I believe it's very powerful. Do you guys have any opinions on Broker's Charm before we move on?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, there's one thing that comes to mind. The secret mode that I like on any gold card, especially one that has 3 different colors, is the fact that it could be pitched to 3 different types of elementals. 2 of the main ones that matter, because obviously almost nobody is playing the blue pitch elemental. That green and white, oh my god. The fact that this card, if it's not good, if you're not playing against a deck where one of these modes is relevant, you're definitely going to be able to pitch it either to Solitude or to Endurance. Those cards are going to very easily like filter this. So drawing 2 cards also at instant speed in a deck that is not like a hard control deck, there's almost no matchup where that's not good. It's like cards like this used to just cycle for 1 card. Like they would be like a 2 mana charm, and it was like, okay, this is fine. Maybe you can cycle it away for 1 card. Like I remember there was a period of time where we were playing the freaking Is It charms before inside of like Splinter Twin. You would have like a single copy or something, so you could get rid of bad cards. This card is good in almost every matchup. It's pitchable to in the other matchups, and then in the worst case scenario, you're getting card advantage. Maybe it's a bit slow in those matches, but my god, that's not that bad. In terms of a mid-range 3 mana instant, this is pretty fucking good.
I would like to add that you said nobody plays Subtlety except Raja because he is also playing Subtlety.
Yeah, I was actually going to say hit the deck list. I just sent it your way. Is playing 2 main deck Subtleties and a 3rd one in the board. And in addition to Ben's point, I think that usually you're going to look at this Broker's Charm in your hand and you're probably going to say, it's my 5th and 6th copy of Archmage's Charm in my deck. But boy, is it cool that this Archmage's Charm has some other modes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's essentially a 3-mode card where the first mode on the card doesn't exist, and I guess it's technically a 3-mode card altogether because you can pitch it to the Endurance. That's when I used to play.
Leyline Binding. Leyline Binding is like really popular in the format too. There are other enchantments. It's really easy and oh my god.
You ever killed somebody's Breach with their Mox Amber on the sack?
Oh, that's classic.
There are a ton of enchantments. Enchantments are probably one of the most relevant. It's probably more important to kill an enchantment than it is to kill an artifact right now in Modern.
Blood Moon as well.
It's like holy crap.
Blood Moon as well.
Now that we've talked about the best cards that Raja is playing, let's talk about the best cards that I'm playing, because let me tell you, have I got a spicy one for us this week. Have you guys ever tried to put different decks together? Because that's one of my favorite things to do as a brewer, is to find a way to splice different decks together. So I looked at my old Boros Saheeli deck that I really tried to ramp into 7 mana and get Saheeli out and Felidar as fast as possible, because one of our friends Logan taught me that the combo is only 6 mana. Because of his time abusing it in Standard to absolutely ruin my week every single week, I learned that this combo is only 6 mana. So, how do we get to 6 mana, you ask?
Well, here, whoa.
There are many different ways.
Before you even go into that, let's talk about what the cards are and what the combo is. It's you're glossing past. Not everybody is a modern perfectionist. Okay, so what are our combos here?
Okay, so our we have a couple different combos in the deck. First one we're going to go over is Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian. So Felidar Guardian, you've seen it on the screen, can flicker a permanent basically, and it comes back immediately. So the way that this combo works is we're going to try and Felidar Guardian, flicker one of our lands, place Saheeli, copy the Felidar Guardian, and then when that Felidar Guardian enters, we're going to copy Saheeli, and then we're just going to make all of the cats, because there's never enough cats.
Yeah,
and then you're going to hit your opponent with all of the cats.
When the Saheeli Rai enters, we legend roll the old one away. The token copy makes a. Wait, this one's the one that comes in. Yes.
So it just flickers it. Saheeli re-enters as if she was never there at the first place. It makes another cat. Cat flickers her. She re-enters as she knows she's never there in the first place. And then here we have. So we have a a lot of 1/4 token cats that are going to sacrifice at the end of turn that have haste, and then you just hit your opponent for 1, like 700 times.
Sure.
And you win the game. Cool. So how do we get there? Well, one of the other things that I've been really liking in Modern is a Tameshi deck. So Tameshi Reality Architect is a 3-mana creature that you can pay a white. And in this deck, he basically just reads pay a white, get back Lotus Bloom from your graveyard into play, as it is a mana value 0 artifact, basically just a Lotus for us. And then you return a land to your hand as part of the cost. Now he also has this extra line of text on him that is relevant at times, where you get to draw a card when you do that for the first time each turn. So if you don't have the resources, you could always just draw a card, see if you find it. And the way that this works is every single land that you have that's tapped is going to make 2 mana, and every single land that you have that's untapped is going to make 3 mana. So if you think of it that way. And then it uses Cultivator Colossus to play it and replay all those lands you just picked up with Tameshi and draw a new card for each of those lands. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to play Tameshi. We're going to return all but one of our lands to our hand using Tameshi's ability and Lotus Bloom, cracking for white mana each time. We're going to make white mana, white mana, white mana, white mana, white mana. The last one's going to make green mana. Then you're going to cast Cultivator Colossus. Now, Cultivator Colossus, when it enters, it has power toughness equal to the number of lands you control. That's why you always want to leave one land on the battlefield if you can.
Yep.
And then you're going to resolve its ability, which basically repeatedly lets you put a land into play, draw a card. Put a land into play, draw a card. Now, there's no space in between these, so you're going to keep resolving the ability until you're done. So land draw, land draw, land draw, land draw, land draw. Now, the normal Tameshi deck uses a couple different other win cons that they can, give their Cultivator Colossus haste, or they can try and Dryad Valak get you out of the game. However, we also have an infinite win con in our deck. So even if we don't get all the way through our deck with Cultivator Colossus, if we just make a bunch of mana, we can just win with the Healy Cat.
Sure, and
So,
I'm also seeing that, let's say our opponent is countering, or it's trying to kill Tameshi. All of these different combos are based on creatures that are relatively resilient, which means that the removal that's being used for them might be a little bit more premium. You might want to save a Lightning Bolt for Saheeli Rai. You might want to save the Unholy Heat for Felidar Guardian. But because each one of these cards, 4 toughness here, the ability to buy back other cards, so you get 2-for-1s there, you're making it so they have to have the right answer at the right time. So it puts stress on their removal as well.
Yeah, essentially every single card in this deck is either a Lightning Rod or finds you a Lightning Rod. So that's why we're playing Ragavan in this deck. Ragavan on turn 1 is a Lightning Rod in itself. Ragavan can usually stress removal, and it's also a card that we can get with our other card that draws us our threats, which is Imperial Recruiter. So the best card about Imperial Recruiter is if you have more than 4 lands, let's say you started the turn with Tameshi with like 6 lands in play, you can actually use Imperial Recruiter to find every piece of the combo that you need. So if you need a Tameshi, you can find a Tameshi. You need a Felidar Guardian, you can find a Felidar Guardian. If you need a Cultivator Colossus, you just bounce enough lands until you have 2 or less, and then now Cultivator Colossus power and toughness is 2, and you can go find it with Recruiter.
Yeah.
Which is super sweet. Now, to go with all of these things, we are playing Ephemerate, which is a very good card because it can redo your Colossus triggers. So if you whiff on the Colossus triggers, you don't have the combo, you can just Ephemerate it, do it again.
Okay.
Along with the fact that you can Ephemerate other cards, like the Pitch Elementals, also known as Fury in this deck. So Fury is there to serve as your Ephemerate synergy, because it synergizes with Ephemerate. It also is just a really good card in Modern, and you can also just play it with Lotus Bloom. I played a few Furies that have just beaten my opponent in the face before, because it is a 3/3 double strike and hits for 6. As well as being flickered with Felidar Guardian, it can wipe people's boards, as well as being copied with Saheeli, it can wipe people's boards and kill them. So there's like 100 different synergies in this deck. The last cards I haven't gone over yet. We are playing a couple different recruiter targets depending on what you need. So if you have everything in hand, like you have the Tameshi, and you needed to find a Lotus Bloom in your graveyard, and you have an Imperial Recruiter, you can use Imperial Recruiter to find Goblin Engineer, which then puts Lotus Bloom in your graveyard, so you can use it with Tameshi over and over again. Because you don't want the Lotus Bloom in your hand, you want it in the graveyard. Say you drew the Lotus Bloom and you need to find a way to put it in your graveyard. You can Imperial Recruiter for a Seasoned Pyromancer, discard the Lotus Bloom, get it in your graveyard, draw some more cards, and then go off with Tameshi. Say you have the Felidar, but not the Saheeli, and you don't have any part of the Tameshi combo, just use Imperial Recruiter to get Kiki Chiki and combo off with Felidar Guardian, because it's also 2 power.
So let me...
And then...
Oh, sorry. I was gonna check with you really quick. Let me see whether or not this is correct. So we've got 3 Imperial Recruiters, 2 Pyromancers. Your main boarding, which is when you main deck a sideboard card. Your main boarding, a Sanctifier Envec, is just sort of your little hate spell here. I imagine that is indicative of a bad matchup. Do you have issues with like black-red scam, or what's the main reason that we're playing this card in here? Because that's the only thing you haven't really explained necessarily why that's there instead of, say, the 3rd Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, so this is our last recruiter target. It was the most recently added one. When you look at Modern, you will be inherently surprised at how many red and black cards there are. Because there in Murktide, if you can land a Sanctifier Invec, you can usually turn off Delirium for them for the entire game, which means that they can't kill your Sanctifier Invec because all their removal's red, and they can't have Delirium, so they can't actually play their Dragon Rage Channeler and hit you for 3, or Unholy Heat your Felidar Guardian, as well as being, just a hammer against Scam, because I hate Scam. I hate playing against Scam. It makes me feel bad every single time I do it. David's smiling because he's a Scam player. As well as it can be a hate against the Reanimator part of the creativity decks. It also just stops random things that you're not thinking about, because a lot of decks, their removal will be only red. Sure. And they don't think about it until you have a Sanctifier Invec play. And they're like, oh, I can't kill this.
That makes sense. I like that the Ephemerate also with... So the Ephemerate doesn't target Saheeli, but pretty much every other threat that you have. Ephemerate has like 3 modes in this deck. People kind of forget that there was a period of time where Ephemerate and cards like this, what was it called originally? Cloud Shift? Whatever it was. The original one that didn't have the rebound. These cards are just good in ETB creature decks as a way of protecting your valuable creatures. And when you're playing an Imperial Recruiter, Goblin Engineer, Seasoned Pyromancer, Colossus, the only cards in this deck that you don't want to get their ETB ability are cards that you want to keep in play despite removal. So you can hold it up. They go for the Ragavan. If they need to kill Ragavan, if they don't have the blockers for it, I might as well Ephemerate this thing to keep it alive. It's a counterspell there. If they're going for the Tameshi, it's a counterspell there. They're going for the Envec. How many removal spells do they actually have that answer the Envec? Because this might counter the only one they have in their deck. It seems like a really good way to get around even when they do have that good piece of removal. Going into the sideboard really quick.
I just want to comment one thing.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
A sneaky thing is a lot of people will let you resolve Felidar Saheeli before they'll kill your Saheeli, right? They're going to kill your Saheeli once it's down to 1 loyalty. Now, you said you can't Ephemerate Saheeli, but what you can do is Ephemerate Felidar Guardian, which flickers your Saheeli again, and then you get to use your Ephemerate on a Saheeli. So there is some sneaky synergy there that you get to get people with once, and then they'll never do it again. Yeah. So.
But it does it makes all the various combos very resilient to interaction, which sounds great to me. You've got a couple of cards here in the sideboard that are pretty cool. The most obvious one, to me, the first thing that because I was looking at the list, I saw the Ephemerates and the Furies, and I was like, no main deck Solitudes? And then I look, all 4 of them are in the sideboard. You are ready to kind of transform your slower cards into interactive cards. Are you taking out maybe the Ragavans in the matchup where you're putting the Solitudes in most of the time?
No, there's 4 Solitudes and there's 4 Furies. So you can customize whether you want Solitude or Fury depending on the matchup. So some matchups you want both. So yeah, those are usually the matchups where you don't want Ragavan or where you don't want other things. You might trim on Tameshis because you don't need as many dead cards in your deck. You can trim on Felidar Guardians because you don't really need that many dead cards in your deck. But the problem with I started out with Solitude in the deck, and the problem with Solitude is all of your white cards are good cards. You don't want to pitch your Felidar Guardian if it's the only combo piece you have in your hand. Sure. But you will end up with extra Ragavans, with extra Seasoned Pyromancers, maybe the Goblin Engineer when you already have the Lotus Bloom in your graveyard. So the reason that Fury's in the main deck is honestly just because it's red and it needs red cards to pitch instead of white cards. And then usually when you're bringing in Solitude, you go against Murktide and you're like, wow, I really don't care if they have a board of Ragavan and DRC. I like, because that Solitude will kill that anyway. I just want to take out Murktide. And so you bring in the card to take out Murktide. That's also why Teferi's there. Teferi is just a good card in Modern. It can hate on Cascade decks because of its ability. It can hate on Murktide because it can just bounce Murktide and negate all their counterspells. We're also playing some Brotherhood's Ends because Hammer's a good deck in the format, and although we're pretty good against Hammer in our main deck, it can't hurt to just, bring in everything to destroy them all. And then we obviously have some more Sanctifier Invex in the sideboard. We have one Magus in the Moon. When we're playing, we're not very good against things like Tron or Titan because they can usually go faster than us on the play. So we want to try and find Magus in the Moon. And some hands, you just hit them with a Ragavan and Magus in the Moon on turn 2 and they can't do anything. Some games you Magus the Moon on turn 3 after they've already had Tron. You have Imperial Recruiter, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a one of. It's a 2 to target for a reason. And then the last card in the sideboard, which is actually a newer one, is Blossoming Calm. Now, the reason that you see Blossoming Calm is not only just for creativity, because it's pretty good against Archons, because you just give yourself hexproof this turn, hexproof next turn, and they'll never hit you with an Archon trigger, and then you can just win the game with your combo. But a lot of Breach decks are switching to the Grape Shot win con.
Yeah.
As some reason to get Gigantha in their deck, some reason because Grape Shot's a good card. Has some utility outside of Thassa's Oracle. Mostly
Clears
just
the board.
for Jeff.
It kind of does a Fury impersonation inside of these decks that want to slow down other aggro decks. Yeah, makes sense.
As one of the only Breach, I won an NRG trial earlier this year, and as one of the only believers in Grape Shot Gigantha, and a person who won that tournament on camera with a Grape Shot line that didn't involve Breach, I can approve of Grape Shot. But Blossoming Calm helps us not die, because you bring it in. I was playing against Young Dingo one night, and he played a Scam Breach. And I lost my mind that night, and I promised myself I would never go below 3 Blossoming Calms now, because they grief you Blossoming Calm. They breach you Blossoming Calm. Just get it over with, because man does that hurt sometimes.
So you've gone through the basics of this deck, and we sort of touched on all the elements in the sideboard and the main board. Let me ask you the question that is raging in my mind, and perhaps will be in the viewers. What makes this better than like that normal build that people are used to seeing with Tameshi, as opposed to that? Like, what do you think makes this a deck that people should be considering and having on their radar, as opposed to, I think it's Bant normally, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
Because I personally, I think I can already see it, but I'd love to just hear, give me your deck builder's insight, extra 2 cents.
Yeah, so the reason, this is better than normal Tameshi. Normal Tameshi, you're right, is a Bant deck because it gets to play things like Wargate, which search out your Lotus Bloom. However, I think taxing your opponent's removal, because one of the main things that they can do to stop your Tameshi combo is by removing your Tameshi. And one of the other things they can do to stop your Tameshi combo is making sure that you don't have enough lands in play to keep your Cultivator Colossus around. Another thing that they can do is disrupt your Valakut Dryad combo or whatever you're using to win the game. Plus, in the regular Tameshi deck, your cards have to fall in the correct way. Sometimes if you get too late in the game and you can't trigger your Valakut enough times to kill them. I would always rather have a definite kill. I am making my opponent kill my creatures. I get extra tutors with Imperial Recruiter that can go into whichever combo that I need to go into. And then finally, I get to play Ragavan, man. Ragavan, good card. But yeah, that's mainly the thing. Plus, you get to play, pitch elementals. It's more of a Tameshi backup plan than it is Tameshi deck, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, it looks like you've essentially taken what people are calling generic Ragavan. You've added the Saheeli cat combo instead of sort of that top end where we're playing main deck Teferis. And then inside of that, you have this relatively small package. It's taking up 5, 6 plus 4, about 10 card slots to really put the Tameshi combo in there. And if you think that the combo is getting you more than the interaction is, why not? Kind of looks like it's a way to play it. I have a couple questions myself, although mine are more like tune-up questions, little ideas on things here. We've got 2 lightning bolts as our interaction, as our main deck interaction. How do you feel about permanent-based interaction instead, knowing that we have the Felidar Guardian to swap out the thing that is actually under it if we're slowing them down, and then before a combo we want to then swap the removal to... So there's the enchantment we talked about before, Prismari Command. Or what is it called?
Bending? Leyline Binding.
Yeah, not Prismari Command. That's the is it thing.
The bad card.
There's also Portable Hole, which is tutorable with the Goblin Engineer. I know you're almost never getting things back, but if you were ever in an instance where you did really need to get rid of a creature in order to combo off or in order to get your Ragavan through, and let's say you have like these leftover treasure tokens, or you can copy something with Saheeli and sack that token. There are weird ways to find artifacts in here. I think that the first Portable Hole might be better than the second Lightning Bolt in its flexibility. That's the only thing that comes to mind right now in terms of like obvious tune-ups. And then also, maybe this is crazy because it would negate your combo, but you're not using any green mana here other than when you're lotus blooming. Is there any chance that you could put some green mana in here and then start using like just little bits of like, you could even put that Bant Charm in here if you wanted, but like little bits of the 5-color removal spells that we were talking about in general. Maybe it's just better to use the prismatic removal spell. Maybe it's just better to use the enchantment removal spell. Like, you could just put a couple of tri-lands in here, and it might just make your removal instantly better.
Okay, so I have thought about both the Portable Hole and the Leyline Binding before, so I can give you instant thoughts on this one.
Okay, sure.
So number 1, Lightning Bolts are in there. They're a red card for Fury. That's number 1. We've already established that we'd rather pitch cards with Fury than Solitude. Secondly, you need to be able to kill a Ragavan with instant speed, and Portable Hole does not let you kill a Ragavan with instant speed because you have a lot of good cards in your deck, and if Murktide gets the good cards in your deck off the top of your deck, they can usually just beat you with your own cards. Or if Scam does, they can usually just beat you with your own cards. And now I have a lot of good cards in this deck, whether it's, Fury or Saheeli. I once had a Murktide player, Saheeli, to copy their Murktide, play another Murktide to like make it huge and then kill me. Mm-hmm. That was fun. But that's not that's like, really, 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 really small differences. The main reason is because we want a red card to Fury and it's an instant instead of a sorcery. Because a lot of times I have used the Goblin Engineer ability before, but a lot of times when you use the Goblin Engineer ability, it's turning your treasures into lotuses because you can just get instant mana from that. So I'm not sure if it being an artifact for Engineer would actually do that much, because a lot of times we're just gonna, if we're finding Engineer, it's to put Lotus Bloom in our graveyard. And then Leyline Binding, the problem with changing the mana base is, again, we're playing the Magus and the Moon in the sideboard for some of our worst matchups, and it gets really hard to have enough basics to win the game, especially with cards like Sanctifier and Vec when you play those tri-lands, because a lot of times you have to cut the tri-lands to get there, or you have to cut other duels, other untapped duels that maybe make you combo faster rather than playing a slow game.
I'd imagine an understated thing that you haven't touched on with Lightning Bolt's value too is just that Lightning Bolt can just be the last 3 damage that you need. Sometimes you're just waiting to cross the finish line, and you know what a Leyline Binding or a Portable Hole doesn't do? It does not dome your opponent for 3.
Sure.
You know what Saheeli does do? She does ping your opponent. I have pinged my opponent out of the game by using Lightning Bolt to finish them. They fetch down to 12. I pinged them 4 times. Lightning Bolt, hit him with Ragavan, and they were like, oh, so I guess you do have burn. And I'm like, yes.
I guess
I'm a burn deck now, baby.
I know that it's gone out of vogue, and you guys, we could probably talk about this in the future for the reasons why Wrenn and 6 has gone out of vogue, and there are things where a little bit of green mana goes a long way to me inside of my head, because this is one of these decks where if we're pinging with the Saheeli, if we have the Lightning Bolt, I'm kind of like, oh, that could be an alter win con too. The only other thought I would have there then is this Spire Bluff Canal and Inspiring Vantage in a deck that kind of wants to hit its 4th mana untapped a lot of the time, kind of susses me out that's the only other thing that I would tune up, and I think is probably bad. I don't like that a deck that wants to Felidar Guardian or Tameshi and then have the white mana on the same turn as the Tameshi, that you don't have always the fourth land is untapped unless it's Rogrin, which you're probably trying to fetch out early anyway. I think that if you just put 2 fetch lands there, or if you put a fetch land and another shock land, something like that, I would like that more. But yeah, cool deck.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's going to be our episode for the first week. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is the Brew Brothers podcast. If you love Magic the Gathering, if you love Modern, if you love coming up with new ideas or exploring other people's new ideas, this is the place to be. This is the show to watch. We're going to be doing future episodes live on Twitch, so go ahead and check out, I believe it's either Brew Brothers or The Brew Brothers. I'm going to put a link inside of the description, and I'm actually going to put it right over here, the exact one, at twitch.tv. We are going to be doing our first full covering episode talking about Phyrexia All Will Be One and its relevance to the Modern format, whether or not it's our own ideas or other people's, because we're going to be doing it on the 4th, I believe. Is that the right day? Anybody got the calendar? Regardless, point is, we're going to be doing this podcast every 2 weeks right here on Twitch at 11 a.m.
11th.
Say it again?
The 11th.
It's the 11th. Okay, 4th is
because we're going to do every other week.
Yeah, every other week. Every 2 weeks here at twitch.tv, we're going to be doing it 11 a.m. Eastern time till around 2 o'clock. We're also going to be on the same channel doing leagues with various decks that we're testing, sometimes decks that we've already done presentations on. I'm especially going to be focusing on this new Infect card, or I guess Toxic card that's come out, this 1-drop. It feels very spicy for me. So go ahead and check that out. Beyond that, be sure to check us out. We're making a TikTok. We've got a YouTube, and we've got a Discord. That all will be in the description. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube, get a subscription to the YouTube, and leave a comment and tell us about what your favorite card to brew around is. What's your guilty pleasure card? What's your card that you just can't quit? What's the card that you hate losing to more than anything? Because guess what? I'm going to be packing 4 of them in the sideboard. Regardless, we're going to be having a good time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast. If you got any ideas, send them our way. I'm TunaChip. These are my co-hosts, BDuggs. Ben, go ahead and say good night to everybody.
Good night. You can find me at BDuggs44 on Twitter if you want to follow me.
Absolutely. And David?
I don't post on Twitter, but if you want to find me, good luck. I'm not going to give you my socials yet. Stick around. Maybe I'll give them to you later.
Awesome. This is the Brew Brothers podcast. Keep shuffling. Keep fucking around. See ya.